Okay, this is 2.8. First problem wants us to solve this inequality, and it looks like it's going to have solutions on 3 different intervals, and it wants us to give some of the points from those intervals. Okay, so what I would do, you're tempted to clear fractions here and multiply through by x minus 2 times 9, but that doesn't work. And the reason why is because you don't know if this number is positive or negative right here, depending on what x is, and therefore you don't know to switch the sense of this inequality. So clearing fractions does not work with inequalities when there's variables in the bottom. If there's no variables in the bottom, it works fine. But keep in mind that the method we used in the last section with clearing fractions whenever we had an equal sign and fractions, it doesn't work for inequalities when there's variables in the bottom. So we're going to do x over x minus 2, and we're going to subtract this to the other side then and try to combine these fractions. So we need a common denominator. We're going to multiply the top and the bottom of this by 9, and the top and bottom of this one by x minus 2. And that gives us 9x minus x squared plus 2x in the numerator, and in the bottom we get 9 times x minus 2. Then that's still got to be greater than 0. Let's simplify this one some more then. Add the 2x, that gives you 11x minus x squared all over 9 times x minus 2. I'm going to factor the top by pulling out an x, and that leaves me with 11 minus x. Alright, it helps to have everything factored if you can, because it makes the sign chart a little bit easier. So we're going to make a sign chart. We're going to put the key points on here, which are the zeros and the places where it's undefined. We have 0, we have 11, and we have 2 as our key points. So let's put those on there. 0, 2, and 11. Now this 0 was a 0, 2 was an undefined, and 11 was a 0. It's important to write that down. Okay, now pick a number less than 0, like negative 1. Negative 1 gives you a negative here, gives you a positive there, and then it gives you a negative in the bottom. Double negatives cancel, and this goes positive. Okay, pick a number between 0 and 2, like 1. Pick 1, you get a positive, and then a negative in the bottom, so that goes negative. Pick a number like 3 in this interval. 3 gives you a positive, and then a positive, so that'd be positive. Pick a number bigger than 11, like 12. 12 gives you a positive, a negative, and then a positive, so that'd be negative. Okay, so we're asked the question, where is this thing, what we're answering is, where is this thing greater than 0? Which is the answer to the same question they asked us above. So it's greater than 0 wherever this is positive, which would be from here to here. And I want an open circle here because 0, we want it greater than 0, not equal to 0. And I also want this interval here. I can't include the undefined spot, so that has to be an open circle. All the way here, and another open circle on the 0 again. And that's our answer. From negative infinity all the way to 0, not including 0, as well as 2 to 11. So what the problem is asking now, it says break these intervals up, negative infinity to A to B, and B to C, and then C to positive infinity. So you can see how there's the first interval we're talking about, there's the second one, third, and fourth. And our solution is, just from negative infinity to A, and then from B to C. So we have to say that in when we go to answer this. So, my A would be 0, my B would be 2, my C would be 11. And then it's, just basically copy down there. A is 0, B is 2, C is 11. And it's defined in this interval from negative infinity to A and from B to C, and not in these two. All right, here's another one of the similar problems. Now, it wants us to do the same thing. I want you guys to do the same thing, which is to make a sign chart. Put the key points on there, which is 2, 3, and 4. So 2, 3, and 4. Now we need to label what those are. 2 is a 0. 3 is a 0. 4 is an undefined value. So pick a number less than 2, like 0. If you pick 0, then we've got a negative to an even power, so that's always going to be positive. Negative to an odd power is going to be negative. and then it's negative in the bottom, so that'd be positive overall. This is always going to be positive, so I'll leave that there. Pick a number between 2 and 3, like 2.5. This is positive. Next one, 2.5 minus 3 gives you a negative to an odd power, which would be negative, and then we have negative again, so that's still positive. Now pick a number between 3 and 4, 3.5. This time we get a positive there, but a negative there, so it'd be negative. Pick a number greater than 4, like 5. 5 gives you a positive here, and a positive there, so it'd be positive. Great, so we want to know when this thing's positive, so our answer is positive or equal to 0. So our answer is all these numbers, including this number, because that's a 0. All these numbers, including this number, because that's a 0. Not this number, but all the way to the right. All right, so there's our answer. And then it wants an interval notation, so that'd be negative infinity all the way up to 3, including 3, as well as 4, not including 4, all the way up to positive infinity. Okay, same thing here. X minus 3 over x minus 4, we got to add 8 to both sides. Get a common denominator, so multiply the top and the bottom by x minus 4. Multiply top and bottom by x minus 4. So we get x minus 3 plus 8x minus 32 all over x minus 4. It's going to be less than or equal to 0. Let's go ahead and simplify this. So it'd be 9x minus 35 all over x minus 4. It's got to be less than or equal to 0. Okay, let's make a sign chart. Put the zeros on here. So the 0 comes from the numerator. That's where 9x minus 35 is equal to 0. Add 35 and divide by 9, you get 35 over 9, which we know is almost 4. And so I'll put that here, 35 over 9. And then 4 is also, I'll put that above because it's a little bit bigger. Now this is an undefined spot. So this would be undefined, and this is a 0. Okay, so now let's pick a number less than this, like 0. Pick 0, you get a negative in the top and a negative in the bottom, so that'd be positive. Now pick a number that's between these two. Which I'm going to have to do, let's see, I'm going to get my calculator real quick. Okay, like 3.9 will do. 3.9, when you plug it in here, times 9 gives you 35.1. So the top would be positive, but the bottom would be negative, so that'd be negative. Pick a number bigger than 4, like 5. 5 gives you a positive in the top and a positive in the bottom, so that'd be positive. So the question is, when is this thing negative or equal to 0? Well, that'd be this point, because it's equal to 0 there, all the way up to this point, not including this point. So we're looking at this interval 35 over 9 to 4. You can include 35 over 9, but not 4. Okay, another one. Same thing. We need to combine the fractions, so I'm going to subtract 2 over x from both sides. Find out when it's less than or equal to 0. So I'm going to multiply the top and the bottom by x plus 1. Of this one, I'm going to multiply the top and bottom by x as well. And then this one, top and bottom by x. And this one, top and bottom by x plus 1. Alright, so now I can combine these fractions. I have x squared plus x plus 2x minus 2x minus 2 all over the common denominator x times x plus 1, less than or equal to 0. Looks like this 2x and this negative 2x cancel. And I get x squared plus x minus 2 all over x times x plus 1. Okay, so let's see, does that factor two numbers that multiply to be a negative 2 and then be 1 in the middle, x plus 2, x minus 1. Yeah, it factors, so let's factor it. Alright, now I can do the sign chart again to figure out when this thing's less than or equal to 0. So we're going to put the zeros on there, negative 2, 1, and the undefined spots, 0, negative 1. So we've got -2, -1, 0, and 1. Label what those are. -2 is 0. -1 is an undefined spot. 0 is undefined. And 1 is a 0. Okay, so pick a number less than -2, like -3. That gives you a negative, a negative, a negative, and a negative, so that'd be positive. A number less, they're in between -2 and -1, -1.5, gives you a positive, a negative, and a negative, so that'd be negative. Looks like it's going to alternate. -0.5 gives you a positive, a negative, and a positive, so it'd be positive. 0.5 gives you a positive, a negative, a positive, and a positive, so that'd be negative. And then 2 gives you a positive, and a positive, so that'd be positive. So yeah, I did alternate. And we want to know when it's less than or equal to 0, so we're looking at the negatives. So that'd be this point, all the way up to this point, not including that point. And then not including this point, all the way up to the 0. We can include the zeros because it's less than or equal to 0. So our answer is -2 to -1. You can include -2, just not -1, as well as from 0 to 1, including 1, not including 0. Okay, I'm going to skip the next couple because they're exactly the same. You know, you move the 5 over, you make a sign chart, you solve. So just like the last problem. Same with this, move the 1 over, you know, add fractions to the common denominator, make the sign chart, just like we did. Same thing with this one. This one's, I guess, a little bit tricky because the top factor is an x minus the square root of 10 times x plus the square root of 10 if you're going to try to factor it and get the zeros. The bottom doesn't factor, so the bottom's never 0. So when you go to make your sign chart, the sign chart, you put on there negative square root of 10 and positive square root of 10. And then you test those intervals. So I think it's positive, negative, positive, if I remember correctly. But you know, test the point like -4, test 0, and test +4, and then give your answer in interval notation again. Other than that, it's exactly the same. All right. So the next problem then says the interval described in set builder notation by the inequality has the notation. So we want to solve this right here. So if you remember correctly, we took 3x, we set it less than 9, then we took what's inside the absolute value, changed the sense of the inequality, and changed the sign on the number. And so we're solving this. We have x is less than 3, and in this case, x is greater than -3. So obviously, I always draw a number line and try to piece together what word to use, whether it's and or. It looks like we're talking about the in-between, so we're using and. So we can write that as a compound inequality, or as an interval, -3 to 3, which is what they wanted. Once again, make a sign chart for this. Put on 0, -2, and 2, so -2, 0, and 2, and just test to figure out whether they're positive or negative, and give the answer in interval notation. Pretty straightforward. Okay, here's a compound inequality. I actually couldn't solve this by just adding something to everything, so I broke it up into 2, like this. Because the word and, you can do that with these compound inequalities. And then solve this. So subtract 2x, or subtract x, you get x here. Subtract 4, you get x is less than -2. And subtract 2 here. Subtract 3x, you get -2x is less than or equal to 8. Divide both sides by -2, you get x is greater than or equal to -4. So that's from -4 to -2, including both. So we have -4 and -2 here, which is exactly what the answer is. You can graph this if you want and take a look at it. The blue line's in between the other two, from -4 to -2. So that is the answer. And I'm out of time on this last problem, so here's the work for it. Just this, what's underneath the radical has to be greater or equal to 0. So set it greater than or equal to 0 factor. Put the key point on the sign chart and fill it out, and you'll get 1 to positive infinity in my case. So there's the work. Pause it if you need some more help with it. But I can't go over 15 minutes in these videos, so we'll have to do this more in class.